Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Shay Show. My name is Shay, and today, I know it's Super Bowl Sunday, we get to speak and finish our conversation with Justin McRoberts. We started it last week, and he had some technical difficulties. His phone overheated and went down. So, those of you who do not know Justin McRoberts, he's an author. He is a thought leader, especially in the Christian American human perspective. When reading his stuff and his words, one is immediately touched with a deep thinker who is trying to process how to truly show up in their humanity on this planet, and with a deep spiritual belief as well. So there he is. There he is, y'all. I'm going to go get him. Justin.
Hi.
My man.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, actually.
Good. Where are you?
Myself in my office. Hi.
Okay. Let's see. You're getting in your office. So you were in Colorado last time. Now you're back in Cali?
Yes.
I'm trying to use the lingo. Is that what people call it? They did not. I know they don't.
Maybe some do. They're just not from here.
Right. Right.
If we're gonna be honest.
If we're gonna be honest. Right. No, I want you to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're back in California. How was your time out in Colorado?
It was fantastic. Really.
Good. Well, we got cut off last time. I didn't realize it. I was like, did he hang up on me? No, I knew you didn't.
It was that one question. I was like, I don't have time for this.
You know what? Over. Power off.
Like,
yeah.
Like done.
Your phone overheated in the car and turned
Dude,
off.
I was like, I saw my phone kind of starting to freak out. I was like, what?
Are you acting crazy?
And it had a little temperature gauge on it, and it says overheated. I was like,
yes.
Fine. I'm okay.
I'm fine.
Why aren't you okay?
Apple, why you got to be so needy, Apple?
It was really rough. So and then it wouldn't come undone for like 20 minutes. But there's no overheating happening now.
Okay, good.
We're all square.
We were just kind of diving in. We were being incredibly vulnerable with one another, and we were just diving into the space of like, look, so why, in the larger, I can tell you from my perspective, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but from my perspective, in the larger, like white American Christian world, it is really a situation where they're definitely seem to be more interested in being right than doing right. And they want to know that they have all of the answers.
Yes.
And they hold the truth. They are the keepers of the truth. And if you don't hold the truth as they do, unfortunately, I don't want it to happen, but you're going to hell. And it seems to me that in that process, you are precluded, like you actually can't really care about people.
No, you care about the system. Like this is part of why conversations is only part of why. This part of why the conversations about patriarchy, about misogyny, about racism, because these are systemic conversations.
That's right.
And I'll say we, and by we I don't mean like Christians. Here's what I mean by we. I mean like dudes that look like me.
White guys.
Have white men.
Yes. Who in America
have white American men.
Yes.
Straight white American men.
All of that. Cis born. Yeah.
Why I'm a guest.
Yeah.
Have so systematized, done two things at the same time that have been actually really strangely difficult to do, that you would figure it was like really intentional.
Right.
They've so systematized religious practice and so highly individualized religious experience.
So can you break that down?
In other words, so it's about the system. What you're describing is like, so rightness, like we were talking about last time, rightness and righteousness are measured by your allegiance to the system and to a systematized understanding of behaviors, of thinking. It's not relational. It's points. It's a game. So do you fit through this doorway? Do you look like us? And not in a discipleship way, but in kind of a marketing way. Like it's a system.
Sure.
Thing on Sunday because it works for the system and not because it actually works for your life.
Right.
We plan a sermon series because it's what we're prepared to teach and not what's actually going on in your life.
Okay.
And the flip side of that is the hyper-individualization of religious experience. So the system, the religious system in white dominant, male dominant, straight dominant spaces in Christian America, highly systematized, very points oriented, very controlling.
What is it?
Then,
go ahead.
My
keep going.
experience, though, is mine. The product I can sell you is that this is good for your life. It's not actually communal. So the way I'm supposed to measure that for me is how I am personally. I'm so highly individualized. I don't actually share my experience of God with other people. So what ends up missing in the gap there is if you've got the system over here docking or rewarding me points, and then I have my personal experience in here with just me and Jesus. What lacks in the space is other people, growth, like actual maturity, critique, the prophetic, like all the things that make up, the Bible. Like all the things that make up the actual story of God in relationship to humanity are like left out of this dualistic, systematized, highly individualized religious thing that we have going in America.
Why do you think it works for so many people? Why is that something that's desirable? Because everything that you just said makes my stomach hurt.
I don't think it works. I don't. It's 79 or whatever it was, 75% of white Christians in America voting for Donald Trump a second time. It doesn't work. You'll go around this. It works the way heroin works. Heroin doesn't work.
Oh.
What's that doing for you?
It's killing you.
It works the way alcoholism works. It works the way any kind of addiction works. It works the way products work. Like, that's how it works. But it doesn't really actually work. It doesn't change my life. It doesn't deepen my soul. It doesn't enrich my relationships. I am not more like Jesus. I'm more like the machine. So it works that way.
Oh, yes.
But it doesn't work. So
it doesn't work in terms of creating relationship with other human beings. It doesn't work in terms of creating closeness to God, to deity, to spirit, to the divine. It doesn't help with that at all. It actually, if anything, puts fissures between those spaces.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm so glad you went there. Honestly, as of late, it's been hard for me to say that I'm Christian. Just because I'm like, I have a friend who is a Anglican minister, and she has so much trauma surrounding the word God that even today this woman loves God, and therefore she loves people. And you would feel this from her if you just sat with her for a second. And so the word God is packed for her with a lot of traumatic feelings. And honestly, the word Christian kind of hits me in the same space. I remember being in a Christian university. Are you hearing feedback? Because I'm hearing myself.
I'm not.
I remember being in a Christian university, and every time they would have these ministers who were always 99% white, male, Christian, American men, come to preach to us. One of the things they always would say is, let's get back to our founding fathers. And I would sit there and be like, but I don't want to be owned by you.
Again. And by the way, those weren't your fathers. Those were his fathers.
Right. And I was like, so is it all right?
It didn't go super well for everyone last time.
Right. And it seemed, and I remember bringing that up, being like, that doesn't bode well for me. That doesn't feel like a clarion call of freedom or honor or integrity. If anything, it feels like bondage. It feels very hostile in bondage. And when I just raised the question, just raised my personal feeling, it was as if I had offended the world and that I was not holy.
Well, and you know better than I do. I mean, the two things that are happening there at the same time. One is because you are a Black woman, you are threatening, not because you have threatening intentions, but because like from the standpoint of power and privilege, I don't know what to do with you. I know what I can do with me, systems that make me feel comfortable with my machinery. What I hope, this is so garbage to have to say, but you and I both know this is true. I hope to whiteify. I hope to whiten the blackness that arrives in my culture just enough that I've got black folks in my system.
That's right.
But they don't act like black people.
Right. That's right. And you know what?
Without calling it out, like that
that's
really
right.
honestly was like, that's how the freaking thing was designed. And
that's
not
right.
Because, and I'll take a step back and say this. And it's not just because these are like awful, terrible human beings. Because they were bought and sold on their own freaking sales pitch. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. Yeah. And it worked so well for folks like them that they did the kind of gross psychological thing we do is I'm going to project. If it works for me,
I'm throwing it everywhere.
It works for you. So these are folks for whom like it did work. It was good for a certain amount of people. Now I'm only going to do that much work then. And then if you want to come in here and get this good thing,
that's right.
Then you need to come through this doorway a little bit more like me. So if you're a black woman and your experience, like we talked about last time, your experience of what is true is a far blacker experience of true. I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
You force me to a place where like I'm out of control and I don't want to be out of control.
That's
I trust my own control.
Right.
And I feel like I've done good things with my control.
Yes.
I've done good things with my control. It's just really limited.
Right. I mean, that is so real. I love that you actually address that because no one ever, I often tell people, like, no one ever sat me down and said, hey, Shay, now you got to make yourself digestible to white people. Okay. You got to make them, you got to make yourself, you got to make them comfortable.
Yep.
And with you being around.
Yep.
You can't emote too much blackness, whatever that is, head wrap, braids, whatever that blackness is. And then, so you got to make them feel comfortable.
Yep.
Then you got to make them like you. Then you got to wow them. You got to be flipping amazing in that situation. Do you understand? I learned that and I knew that. And so every circle that I was in, and for some reason, I always kind of navigated largely white spaces.
Yes.
And for many years, now my private conversations with like my family or like my black friends look very different than even my people who I considered like my close white friends. I wouldn't go there with them because I knew that they couldn't do that. I knew that that was a line that if I showed up fully like I was, our relationships were going to end. And frankly, this year at 45, I'm a lie. I'm 46. At 46, I am no longer willing to truncate myself. I'm no longer willing to make sure I'm palatable for you, but you are absolutely precisely spot on. And for people who have a hard time believing that, this is what I tell white women. No one has ever very few people have ever sat white women down and said, hey, I just want you to know that there's an inverse relationship between your beauty and your value. Okay. The fatter you get and the less sexually attracted you are to white males, there goes your relevance, girl. No one has ever sat a sister down and told her that. But you know what? Women, we know that shit. We know that.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. And how much better was if there was a sermon series?
Right.
It was like, can we talk about the way we have, not just because this is what we do is we do the same thing with sex that we do with race.
It's true.
We do this. We say the culture is over sexualized. So we generalize the whole thing. Everything's like it's a sin problem. That's what we do. That's a sin problem.
Right.
And we're all done.
So what was the problem when white people owned us and brought us here and you want to call them born again Christians? I want to know, how did they reconcile it?
Yeah, well, and they don't, and they don't, and they can't, which is why it never gets specifically addressed. So that's why things get overgeneralized.
Right.
You can't reconcile that stuff. And if you want to address hyper specific stuff like misogyny, like patriarchy, if you want to actually address the way that women are regularly sexualized, and not in a way of like attraction, but in the way of power.
Yep.
Then I have to actually address my power need, my
Uh-huh.
power struggle,
Ooh,
my power addiction.
that's right.
And very, very few of me
Want
have,
to do that.
honest to God, ever really gone after that in me, because it causes me to actually have to die. I have to die to my power and my privilege to a degree. I have to reallocate my power and my privilege, because I'm always going to have it. We got to be honest about this. I'm going to have this. Like, I'm a straight white Christian male. There just isn't going to be a time in my life in which I'm not in a position of power and privilege. But
there's a fear that you will lose this power. And it's very interesting to me. There's this fear that the white American Christian male is like, all these Negroes, all these Mexicans just going to take our power. But I'm like, oh, no. Wait a minute. I thought you said that there was no systemic racism. I thought you said that there was no privilege. So you can't fight to hold on to the privilege you don't have. You can't have them both. Either the privilege exists and you understand that that's what you're trying to do is hold on to it, or the privilege doesn't exist. And so then you should not have a problem with any Negro or Mexican who's trying to just live.
No, it's almost as if there's a lack of self-understanding. A little bit.
So how did you become you? Go ahead.
The gift that, you talk about, like you having to, getting to regularly navigate white spaces. One of the gifts, I'm going to go ahead and assume, the prophetic gifts you end up getting to offer is, I don't get forced into, and it is forced, I don't get invited or forced into this kind of self-examination unless I'm actually in relationship with and in love with people who are not like me, for whom I will decide then to make room, because it costs me emotionally to not do so. In other words,
that's right.
So it's one thing to have a conversation about LGBTQ rights or membership. It's a different thing to be in a congregation in which we have gay, lesbian, transgender, cis brothers, and want to, honest to God, be in relationship with those people, because we're in an actual conversation that requires me to do the work of recognizing my power and my privilege, and knowing that that's the road forward. I can't sermonize, I can't philosophize. I actually have to fall in love with people who are not like me, so that I can.
Is that what Jesus is calling us to do?
It's a little bit like that. So similarly, and it sucks super bad. It really does. Similarly with people of color in white spaces, there are those of us who part of our calling ends up being like, there's a season, and this sucks so bad. There's a season in which you're going to carry a weight that other folks aren't going to have to carry, and you've done that,
and you can't talk about it. Carry the weight, and you can't even talk about the weight.
Yes, and you've carried the weight, and folks have not understood why you were stressed or whatever, but like, you were there long enough to get a hold of some people's hearts, minds, to earn the right to be heard. And what a garbage path to have to get right. And it shouldn't be that way, but for so many of us, that ends up having to be the case. Like, go in, you get punched in the face, and then later on down the line, like, you need to know that when I'm in your space, as much as I liked being around you, I leave feeling disabused and smaller. I was not enough to you because of who I am, and
And you're saying so many things, the relationship, the friendship thing, like, years ago, I heard Chris Christie say this, and I was like, Chris Christie, this is one thing that I'm like, I agree. He's like, his mom always taught him it was hard to hate up close. And it is hard to hate up close.
Yes.
When you know people and you love people, it is hard to hate them. And it's hard to believe the worst of them. Yes. But if you are simultaneously semi-aware of your power and your privilege, and you fear losing said power or privilege, and you know that any kind of opening to the larger conversation is going to threaten that, you won't go there even with the people you love.
Yes.
You'll love them in their box. It's just a challenging thing, because I'm like, why? The thing that hurt my feelings the most when all of this all kind of started coming out, and I just couldn't be quiet any longer, was the lack of desire of white American Christian churches to say, oh, wait a minute, Black lives do matter. I was like, so I asked a white kind of friend, colleague, a former boss of mine who's a white American male Christian, that I was still so ignorant. I was like, now why is that hard for the white Christians to say Black lives matter? He's like, well, you believe your life matter, doesn't it? I was like, Yeah, but y'all never have.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
I just didn't understand why that wasn't something, if we're truly following the tenets and the belief of God, which is like, listen, you don't have to be a theological genius. Here it is. Love. That's it. That's what you need to work on.
Yeah. In fact, how about we try less? We try less to be theological geniuses.
Right.
That would be good.
Right. You know,
Because,
go ahead.
yeah, because part of the deal here, I mean, we just got to is if these leaders, if the people at the front end of these cultures, because there are multiple, if the people at the front end of these predominantly white, predominantly male evangelical spaces were following the actual principles of the person of Christ, then these conversations would at least be easier, if not like having been accomplished, like we'd be further down the line. So the real indictment, and this is part of why it doesn't happen. The real indictment is that you're not. The real indictment is
you're not having these conversations.
The problem is you're not actually following Jesus. You're not.
Right.
He's involved in your work. I'm not saying he's not around.
Right. He's in proximity. It's proximity.
You have your work in your ministry. Your
proximal
has a
relationship.
Proximity to Jesus, but it does not look like him.
Right. I mean, were you ever there? Were you ever there? And then how did you get from there to here?
I lost a lot. Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit last time. I mean, the church, institutional church journey for me, I would take, for the most part, nothing. I would rather not take most things back. I try not to live with regrets. It is the thing. But man, I dropped the ball so bad at times with specific regards to like conversations around race and around LGBTQ rights and LGBT like membership and belonging and theology. Like
the first thing we do to LGBTQI people plus is that we remove their relationship with God. If we tell them they can't even have one, who the flip are we? Yeah. Anyway,
not the right people. But I lost a lot in this conversation about like you have, in order to change, in order for these things to actually change, it's honestly a matter of relinquishing power and privilege, which I'm gonna push and say that in these cultures is not like it's a systemic issue, but for the people at the helm, this has got to be a thing that I actually want to do. And if I do not want to do it, then the only path forward is the utter deconstruction of the machinery completely. So what ended up happening for me is I had gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual folks in my congregation, and I had like people of color in my congregation who were suffering in the system that I was benefiting from. And I could feel it, see it, kind of get it. And I felt like there were potentially some like common road, arm in arm pathways forward, which I didn't know at the time was a masked way of me saying, I would rather not die in order to make this way. I would rather not, I want to be involved. I want to still lead. I didn't know that what I was saying at the time was like, I still want to be in charge. But that's what I was saying. And so I ended up losing friends. I ended up losing
me too.
Job. And I just ended up losing. And I had to. And I had to lose people. I don't want to say I had to. Because I lost people that I loved. Because I lost friends that I'll never, ever get back. Yep. Because I lost a job that I will never get back. Because I lost personally, I legit woke up and went, yep, I actually get it now. So I fell in love with people. I came to an honest connection with people who are not like me, and then I lost battles. And that's how I get here. Which is like, strangely enough, that is the merciful pathway. That is the merciful pathway.
And and you're saying something that's so powerful because you were in proximity with these people when you're, trying to do it without really doing the work and willing to die for the work.
Yep.
And oftentimes the proximity makes us feel like we are absolved of the bad thing, right?
Yes.
So, like anytime when I was having difficulty with George Floyd, and the thing about it is, I didn't just have difficulty at George Floyd. George Floyd, and I hate that he had to be murdered for me to do this, but he wasn't the first time I felt that, but he was the last time that I was prepared to feel it.
Yep.
He was the last time for me.
Yep.
Like, I was like, not one more time. And it was, so what I realized is most of the, what I would say, I had quite a few white American Christians who dove in with me, but I have too lost even if I try to act like I haven't, they will never be the same. They will never exist again, because I cannot be the person who they like. The person who I truly am is someone who is unlikable to them,
yeah.
frankly, because I cannot toe the line. And what I'm trying to say is proximity is the one thing that they love. The people who I'm no longer in their world, they're no longer really in mine, is they all had one or two Black people who said the same thing. And I was like, proximity doesn't mean anything. No. Every man who hates women has a mother.
Come on.
So clearly we could have proximity to things and benefit from not loving it, and also actively not love it.
Yes. Proximity is not relationship. Proximity is an opportunity to relationship, but proximity is never a relationship in and of itself.
Did you want to jump into these relationships with the LGBTQI, with the idea, LGBTQI plus, with the idea of trying to change them and trying to make them feel like, hey, by the way, because this is the thing, if you've ever met and known someone who is gay or who is LGBTQI plus, there's one thing you really know about them, that's a hard place for them to be. Oh, man. And nobody woke up that morning and said, you know what I want to be?
I want this battle.
Right.
I want to know, especially in religious spaces. Like, it's so insanely hard. No, I never had a sense of like, hey, I got to get these people changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need to straighten people out. Like, it was not like, no, theologically, socially, biblically, like in the conversation, like where's God moving in your life was always the thing. The mistake I made wasn't trying to put myself in a position to gay people, which is like just a terrible thing that anyone ever wants to do.
Yeah.
Like,
and P.S. It doesn't work. P.S. It doesn't work.
Not only does it not work, it shouldn't, and don't do that.
Right.
But I thought there would be a pathway forward. Yeah, here we go. Everyone does have to die in order to move forward in community. That's true.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
What I did in my mind is I got really soft about it, and I was like, maybe that just means there's a way for everyone to win, and that's not the same thing.
Ooh.
So instead of recognizing like everyone's gonna have to die, that's true. To live in community, to move forward in community with folks that I am not like, everyone does have to die.
And what you mean by that is there's certain precepts, certain feelings, certain thoughts, certain experiences that you've had that exist outside of the relationship with these new people, that at some point on the altar of who you guys are becoming together, some of those things are going to have to fall away.
Yes. And so the two mistakes, one is I tried to make it I tried to set it up so that everyone could win moving forward. You can't. Everyone does have to die. That's the first mistake. The second mistake is when it comes to like what we lose and how hard that is, it was never going to be as hard for me as it is for a lesbian couple trying to raise a kid.
Right. It never was going to be that. Nope.
I didn't recognize that emotionally, interpersonally. I just didn't. And so we would have conversations, and it wasn't that I was hurting people's feelings directly, but it was really clear, like we're on board with someone who does not actually get this and has not like emotionally, like otherwise like earned his place as a leader, but the institutions installed them as a leader. So I did not know how much harder it would be for specifically for these friends to like carry this for me. It was heavier for them, and I just didn't know it at the time, which is part of why I lost. It's part of why I lost friends.
Right. Oh my gosh. What would you, if you could, I know we can't control, we can't change anything, change anybody. We can only change ourselves. But what is something that you would like for other people who are sitting in the United States of America with a very white American Christian ethos behind them, what is something that you would challenge them to start with? Just a start.
Start. Two things. It's always two things. One, take a legitimate, actual survey of your actual spiritual, emotional life. Like, actually do that. Like, don't do the thing where, like, I'm okay because I'm okay, or I'm okay because I've done, like actually take a break. And
what does that look like?
Mostly looks like Sabbath keeping. Mostly looks like divorcing myself from a dependence on a devotional life over which I am still in control, and instead putting myself in a position to not be in control. What
does that look like? What was one of those situations for you?
Honestly, like Sabbath keeping, like from the standpoint of like spiritual development, like putting myself in a position to like, if I like devotionally, my devotional training was like get 15 minutes in the morning was the thing.
Right.
Like that was like everyone, my generation and white.
Yeah, mine too.
Get 15-minute quiet time.
At least you gotta have your quiet time.
The whole idea of a 15-minute quiet time is like squeeze it in. It's like check it off the list, get it done, which means like I'm still in control of it.
Right.
It fits into my life.
Yeah.
Right. Which then over the course of time means that that's how God works.
Yeah.
God fits into my life. If that's how I'm forging my relationship with God, is by controlling this 15 minutes and telling God that's the 15 minutes you get. If that's what I do, then that's going to be the shape, the nature of God's place and power in my life. Is you will fit in when and where I make time for you. What Sabbath keeping does is says, no, son, you take 52 days a year off the calendar and you just hand them to me, and then we start from there. That's what Sabbath keeping says.
Oh,
like, you're not in charge of your life.
Right.
You don't get to tell me where I fit in. I'm telling you, you take one day every week off the calendar. You don't work. You just hand that to me. Now I'm no longer in control. I've handed a day of all the things that I use to forge and galvanize my own identity the way I want it. And I say those, like, for this day, I hand those over. And it's why, like, I can't remember if it was John Mark Comer's book or whoever was talking about Sabbath keeping.
I don't know this book.
The number of people in general who actually keep the Sabbath versus like pastors. Pastors actually worse than the average American. Like on the regular, like they don't actually keep the Sabbath. It's a freaking commandment.
I see it, man. I see, like, I'm here in Charlotte and there's a big church here, and this Pat is amazing. He's amazing. But I'm like, this brother like will preach 3 sermons in one day. I'm like, how is that sustainable? I'm going to be honest. From on the outside, as I did not realize I have high capacity. People kept describing me as that. I was like, I don't know what that is. But I guess I possess a lot of energy. I knew whatever I possessed, I couldn't do that crap every week.
Yeah. So that's the first thing you said. Like, what I want to see people do is, one, actually take a for real survey of your psychological, spiritual place, and like learn to practice the Sabbath. The second one is intentionally make space for voices that are not like your voice, and don't do it in order to learn what the other side sounds like. In order to be convinced. Yeah. Do it in order to go and be convinced. Do it believing that God speaks through gay people. Do it believing that God speaks through black pain. Yeah. If you don't go there, then you will still be in that position of power. You will listen to the things that make sense to you. You will do the devotional 15-minute thing. This has a place in my life, etc.
And you'll feel pretty holy doing that shit.
Yeah, you will, 100%. And you'll feel strong and powerful. It's great. But like, go there in order to be convinced by someone who is not you. Go there believing God will speak to you differently and uniquely through someone who's not like you. So rearrange your spiritual life and bank it around the Sabbath, and then actually pay attention to the voices of people around you, in proximity to you,
Yes.
who are not like you, and do that
Yes.
in order to be convinced.
What was something that you did on one of your first Sabbaths that you just like handed over to God and was like, you know what? I don't have no 15 minutes. I don't have my prescribed journal entry. I don't have my prescribed John Eldridge book. I am just, this your day.
You said John Eldridge.
Y'all know, every white
that's
man
so
and Christian in America was like reading John Eldridge. Everyone. I was like, if you ain't reading John Eldridge, you're going to hell. You just need to know that.
Oh my gosh, man, there was no more guilt. Like, talk about a book that was like, everyone's reading this mostly because you feel guilty if you don't. It was like how that book got pitched. It was like, do you not want to be healthy and male? It's like, I do. So,
right here. Yeah.
The one thing I did early on with Sabbath keeping I did a lot not right, was I decided that I wasn't going to plan to publicly share things that I had come to during the Sabbath. In other words, instead of being the conduit of like, if I receive it, I pass it on.
Right.
Instead, making the decision that if I am touched by, moved by, clarified in something that happens in the Sabbath, be more like Mary and less like Paul. So be more like Mary, who just cherished these things in her heart. And be less like Paul, who was like, I think I got this. Legit knocked off his horse blind, was like, all right, I'm ready to roll. And they're like, no, you're not. Take some weeks off. But like, be more like Mary, be less like Paul. Like, if you receive something good on the Sabbath, hold that, because that's for you. And then if you are actually changed by that, then re-offer yourself as a whole person, but stop passing on information.
Oh, I know. And I know that you have to go, but I just have a couple more questions real quick.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, why is it that it's not even that I'm anti-capitalist? I'm just like, how did capitalism become a religious tenet? Because when I read the Bible, I don't, if anything, I see something that's probably more akin to socialism, but I'm not even a socialist. But I certainly am not someone who thinks that it is a religious hook that I must hold on to. So how did capitalism become tantamount with Christianity?
And what America made us there, and I'm going to point at a couple books here these folks are way, way smarter than I am in this direction. The thing that I know is we like to package sale and upsell everyone and everything. So in other words,
supersize it. You want to supersize it?
Yes, we want to supersize everything. So we don't sell the one religious product. We sell the thing, and then we expect to sell like everything else.
The brand.
So white nationalist Americanism.
Was
and has been the actual religion, and it has proximity to Jesus. And in order for white nationalism to work, we have to point at the fruits of it. And the fruits, the honest to God fruits of white nationalism, are that white people are exceedingly wealthy.
Right.
So
definitely,
So by what system did white men gain all this power, all this land, all this privilege? It's capitalism. So that must be the thing. So that's part of how it happened. It's
that's the part of the amalgamation of it, like where it bends and it forms, and doesn't break but becomes this thing.
Does it work to be a powerful white person with proximity to Jesus? Yes. How do you know that? Because we own everything.
Right. The history speaks.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the part I know. There's a book, and I would point it.
That's helpful for me.
There's a book. I'll do. I will text you. I don't want to get all my books are a big fat mess back there.
I love it.
I believe it is called Kingdom and Empire.
Okay.
And it's a collection of essays, particularly about the divorcing of like all empirical thought from empirical.
I believe you're talking about empirical thought because you're talking about actual things that you study, and you can look at.
So I believe it's called Kingdom and Empire is the book.
Okay, well, you're going to send me the too. So then how did nationalism become a part of it? Because I'm like, when I read the Bible again, it doesn't seem to me that you first of all, it definitely doesn't seem to me like you better be American since it didn't exist. But it certainly doesn't read to me like, ooh, you better be from Egypt, or ooh, you better be from, like, I don't get that. So I'm like, how is that godly? How is that godly?
It's a distortion, and that's why, boy, I'm about to lose some friends. And that's why.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. So it's in the same way that, like, for the biblical story, the people of Israel and the Jewish folks to have a sense of belonging, not just with one another individually, but to the land where they live, right? Yeah. That's it's a good thing to, or like, love your country, the whole thing.
Yes.
Love your country, do that. This is the distortion of that. This is in the same way that you can't, and has historically also been true with relationship to Israel and Palestine. This is not the way.
That's right.
So it's samesies. So there's the distortion, the distorted.
A distorted.
Talk about, like, with like disordered love, or distortions of good things.
Yes. Yeah.
Love for country is a good thing. If I can get a hold of that and I can tweak it a little bit, I can put you back into my machinery and make you more useful. If you honestly love your country, you are its greatest critic. If you honestly love your neighbor, you don't let him park his freaking car the way he parks his car to make it difficult for those folks to get out. If you really do love your neighbor, like, you tell them, like, you can't leave your crap out on your lawn like this.
Right.
Like, if you become a critic of the people you love. Nationalism, in its distortion of that, is like, no. You crystallize and golden calf this thing.
Yeah.
And you make your country sacred, which is not a love, it's a worship. Don't worship your country.
Right. And anytime someone talks about something that makes the country less than perfect, you are inflamed, insulted, and you accuse them of being non-patriot, like they don't love their country. And I thought, have you ever sat to think, like, for instance, every time I would read anything about the Red Wings, I thought, is there anybody more patriotic? Like, here I am fighting in World War One, and I'm relegated. No, actually, World War II. Sorry, I'm relegated to eating in the back, outside of the mess hall, and the prisoners of war are eating with my countrymen. I mean, like there's no even understanding that. Can we at least acknowledge that we have a different experience of America?
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that would be a thing we could do if we were not sold out on the nationalist narrative, which is the prophetic gift, of Black leadership over the course of the last 45, 50 years in America.
What do you mean by that, the prophetic gift?
Because there has not been a clearer call and more loving call to divorce ourselves in Christian or not even Christian spaces. There's not been a clearer and more loving call to divorce ourselves from nationalism than there has been from Black leadership since the mid 60s. Because these are women and men who have literally been disabused by the systems that they want to see change for the betterment of people who will continue to live here. These are women and men who they did not say we're going to burn it all down. They didn't attack the freaking Capitol.
Can you imagine if I showed up there? If I showed up there, just 5 people, 2 people who look like me, I would have been or dead.
Or dead.
Right.
Yeah. But
that one lady just went to Mexico. I literally said to my friend, who is what I said, can I tell you, it is unequivocally, must be, positively amazing to be white. Can I just have a little bit of a Jesus? Just like one day? I mean, how does that happen? You get to go to Mexico and you were like a threat to national security.
But just for a minute.
I mean, and you know what's also hurtful? Right, and what's also hurtful is I do not hear the large white American Christian voice rising up to say, stop this. No. But I heard every one of their voices. There was just a very few who rose up and said to the Black Lives Matter, shut up, sit down, you're doing it wrong. And I'm like, when was protest ever done correctly?
Yeah.
By the one who is the oppressor.
By people who look like me.
Right. I just didn't get that. That really was sad to me.
Well, please don't. please don't come to a point of understanding about that. Like, don't arrive at a point in which like that makes sense to you, because it shouldn't.
Okay, I know you got to go. Last takeaway. What is the takeaway that you want people to have from our conversation?
That you are worth talking to. You're a great interviewer, and I hope that you continue to do this work and draw really good stuff out, and that folks benefit from your leadership and vision, period.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. I did not expect that. Here are my fireball questions on your way out in the spirit of James Lipton. What sound or noise do you love?
The sound or noise that I love, crunching chips.
What sound or noise don't you love?
Someone else crunching chips.
My God. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word is yes.
What's your favorite curse word?
My favorite word is the F word.
It's a good one. Wine or whiskey?
Whiskey.
Okay. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get there?
Come on in.
I love it. That's it, brother. Thank you so much. You're amazing.
You're great.
Bye. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.